The room went silent when Briggs lunged at her, eyes burning, muscles shaking. "You're done hiding behind that cast, Lieutenant," he growled. She stepped back, lifted her left hand and said quietly, "Control isn't hiding." His punch came like a hammer, but technique is faster than rage, and tonight he'd learned that the hard way. Before that moment, Carter had walked through the base with the quiet presence of someone who carried more history than she ever revealed. 35 years old, a Navy lieutenant commander, assigned temporarily as a SEAL instructor while recovering from surgery. Her right arm remained locked in a rigid cast, a reminder of the mission she never spoke about. Yet she kept teaching, moving through every drill with an ease that felt deliberate, measured, almost serene. Many of the trainees respected her immediately. They watched the way she redirected force with a simple shift of balance, the way she turned chaos into stillness. But others whispered doubts. They said technique couldn't beat power. That control was just another word for fear. Briggs was the loudest among them. He laughed when she demonstrated joint locks with only one arm. He muttered to his squad, "Try that without theories. See if it works." Carter never reacted. She only looked at him with a calm that unsettled him more than anger ever could. One afternoon, during a break, a young Marine ventured, "Ma'am, why teach us control when most people just fight with everything they've got?" Carter rested her cast against her side. "Because everything you've got can disappear in one bad second," she said softly. "Control stays." Briggs scoffed in the back. "Control won't save you when someone bigger knocks you flat." She turned toward him, her voice steady. "Then you're welcome to try." A few nearby trainees froze. Briggs smirked, but something in her tone made him hesitate. Her presence changed the rhythm of the entire unit. Doubt mixed with curiosity, respect tangled with ego. People couldn't decide whether she was hiding weakness or hiding something else entirely. And beneath that uncertainty, a storm was already forming, one that would drag Briggs, Carter, and the whole base into a lesson none of them would forget. The joint training base carried its own rhythm. The impact of boots on mats, the sharp calls of instructors, the hum of bodies pushed past their limits. It was a place built for strength and aggression. Yet Carter stepped into the Kan-Shian hall with her casted arm held close, ready to teach something quieter, something few expected. She gathered the class and explained the lesson, not brute force, not overpowering an opponent, but using leverage, timing, and calm precision to stop a stronger attacker. Her voice stayed low as she demonstrated movements with her left hand, redirecting force, breaking momentum, controlling the fight before it turned violent. The SEAL trainees watched her closely. They studied every shift of her stance, impressed by how she moved with one arm as if nothing were missing. But the Marines exchanged doubtful looks. They were warriors shaped by strength, and they struggled to believe in anything softer. Briggs finally scoffed. "This is fighting from a textbook," he muttered, loud enough for all to hear. Carter paused, then met his stare. "Technique creates openings strength can't," Briggs smirked. "Strength ends fights." She responded, "Only when it doesn't fail you." A SEAL whispered, "He's pushing it." Tension rose like a pulse in the hall. Two philosophies quietly collided. Control versus force, patience versus pride. Carter continued, steady as ever, but every movement sharpened the divide. And though Briggs crossed his arms and glared, something about her calm, her effortless precision, began to unsettle him. The spark had been lit. Everyone sensed what was coming. Briggs did not stop after that first remark. He slipped comments into every lesson, each one sharper than the last. "You only talk big because that arm of yours is broken," he said one morning, his voice carrying just enough for the room to hear. A few Marines laughed under their breath. Carter didn't flinch. She simply adjusted her stance and continued explaining the drill, as if his words were dust floating past her. Her calmness irritated him more than any argument could have. During another session, he stepped forward with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "How about a real demonstration today?" he said. "Something that isn't just theory." The class went quiet. Carter studied him for a moment, then nodded. "If it helps you understand, fine." Briggs didn't wait for instructions. He moved in fast, much faster than the trainees expected. Instead of following the lesson, he used full strength, grabbing her casted arm and twisting violently. A crack of pain shot through her body. She dropped to one knee, breath shaking for a single second. Someone shouted her name. Briggs stepped back, pretending innocence, but the satisfaction in his eyes betrayed him. Carter forced herself upright. Her face stayed calm, almost too calm, but her left hand trembled slightly behind her leg. She didn't accuse him, didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "That's enough for today," and dismissed the class. The room emptied in tense silence, but whispers followed her all the way to the exit. A SEAL muttered, "He could have broken her arm again." A Marine replied, "He wanted to." Briggs walked out with forced confidence, but even his own squad looked uneasy around him. Someone finally said what everyone was thinking. He crossed a line, and by the time the sun set, the entire unit was talking about the attack, about Carter's silence, and about Briggs, who no longer looked like a man proving a point, but someone who had made a dangerous mistake. The air around the base shifted after that. Respect turned into concern, doubt turned into anger, and beneath all of it, a quiet question lingered. What would Carter do next? Carter filed no complaint. She spoke to no superior. She didn't even raise her voice. The attack should have pushed anyone else into anger, but she carried it with the same quiet steadiness she used in every lesson. That calm unsettled the unit more than rage ever could. Later that afternoon, while the trainees waited for her reaction, Carter stepped into the hall and addressed the class. Her tone stayed composed. "Tonight we'll hold a reflex evaluation. Anyone who doubts the method may join." A ripple spread across the room. Briggs straightened, almost eager. "Finally," he muttered, loud enough for many to hear. "She's giving me the chance she keeps dodging." Carter met his eyes. No challenge. "Then show up," Briggs smirked. "I'll do more than that." Word traveled fast. By nightfall, curiosity had turned into a quiet storm. Trainees whispered about the earlier incident, about the pain Carter hid, and what this test would expose. For the first time, her reputation felt vulnerable, laid out for judgment. When the hour came, the training hall filled quickly. SEALs watched in silence. Marines clustered together, trading predictions about how long she could last with one good arm. The tension thickened. A young SEAL whispered, "If she loses, they'll tear her apart." Another answered, "She wouldn't call this unless she knew." Briggs entered with a swagger, cracking his knuckles as he surveyed the crowd. He flashed a grin toward her. "Ready to have your theories broken?" Carter adjusted the strap on her cast and stepped onto the mat. No speeches, no warnings. Her silence drew a line across the room, and everyone felt someone was about to cross it. When the evaluation began, the room fell into a cautious hush. Carter stepped onto the mat with her left hand relaxed, her right arm held in its cast. She looked almost fragile from a distance, and yet no one could explain why the air around her felt heavier than before. The first Marine volunteered with too much confidence. He lunged forward using pure strength, trying to overpower her in one sudden rush. Carter shifted a single step to the side. His momentum slid past her. She caught his wrist, redirected his weight, and locked it downward in 3 clean seconds. He hit the mat, eyes wide. Carter released him gently. "Strength moves fast," she said quietly. "Momentum moves faster." The second Marine stepped in before the first even rose. His style was aggressive, punch after punch thrown without pause. Carter didn't counter. She simply waited, letting him burn through his energy. When he overextended, she turned her hips, hooked his arm, and used a simple hip lever throw to send him flat onto his back. A SEAL whispered, "She barely touched him." The third Marine approached with more caution. He tried to match her timing, moving quickly, cutting angles, trying to catch her before she reacted. He was fast, faster than the others, but speed without control left gaps. Carter slipped under his arm, redirected his strike with a soft push, and locked his shoulder in a tight hold. He froze, breath stuck in his throat. "Yield," she said. He did. 3 opponents. 3 clean victories, no violence, no injury, only technique. The room grew silent, the kind of silence that carried realization. The SEALs watched her with new respect. The Marines shifted uncomfortably. Even those who doubted her could no longer deny what they had seen with their own eyes. Someone murmured, "Briggs can't beat that." But Briggs didn't move. His jaw tightened. His pride forced him still. Carter stepped back to center, her breathing calm, her stance steady. She hadn't broken a sweat. And for the first time, the entire unit began to understand the truth Briggs refused to face. Power without control was nothing in her hands. The real fight was about to begin. Briggs stepped onto the mat with anger tightening every muscle. His pride was wounded, and seeing Carter calm only made it worse. He cracked his knuckles and said, "Let's finish this." Carter lifted her left hand, silent and steady. Briggs struck first. A heavy right hook, then another, each one meant to break through her guard. Carter slipped aside, letting his punches tear through empty air. She moved lightly, always just out of reach. Briggs's breathing grew rough, his swings wider, his steps heavier. "Stand still!" he barked, lunging again. She pivoted. His fist missed. Again. Frustration turned into panic. He swung harder, faster, without control. A Marine whispered, "He's burning himself out." With a roar, Briggs charged for a final tackle, throwing everything he had into one blind rush. Carter stepped into the attack, turned her body, caught his arm, and redirected all his weight into a shoulder lock. The impact echoed as he hit the mat, clean, decisive. The hall froze. Briggs tried to fight the hold, but her control was absolute. No rage, no force, only precision. She leaned close and whispered, "Not strength. Control." His resistance broke. He tapped out before the entire unit. Silence followed, heavy, respectful. Carter released him and stood tall, breathing steady. Briggs stayed on the mat, pride shattered. And everyone finally understood why she never needed power to win. She owned the fight. The disciplinary board met the next morning. The room felt colder than usual, filled with officers who already knew the incident had crossed far beyond a simple training mistake. Briggs stood stiffly in front of them, jaw tight, eyes refusing to meet anyone else's. His arrogance from the night before had drained into something small, something cornered. The commanding officer read the findings in a steady voice. "You intentionally caused harm during a controlled session," he said, "and you violated the rules of engagement for training personnel." Briggs didn't argue. He only swallowed hard. "You're suspended," another officer added, "effective immediately." A murmur moved through the hall. Even those who had supported Briggs earlier couldn't deny what they saw. Carter waited quietly at the back, her cast resting against her side. She hadn't asked for punishment. She hadn't spoken a single word against Briggs. Yet justice arrived anyway, calm and clean, just like her. Then the commanding officer turned toward the room. "There is one more thing the unit deserves to know," he said. "Lieutenant Commander Carter's record has classifications not previously disclosed." The whispers stopped. "She served with DevGru, Falcon Unit," he continued. "Multiple high-risk operations, 0 failures." Shock rippled through the ranks. Some stared at Carter as if seeing her for the first time. Others looked away, embarrassed by the doubt they once carried. A Marine whispered, "That explains everything." Another added, "No wonder she moves like that." Briggs lowered his head. Whatever pride he had left collapsed under the weight of who she truly was. Carter didn't boast. She stepped forward only to say, "My past doesn't matter, only what I teach you now." But the shift had already happened. Respect settled over the room like a quiet tide. And from that day on, even the skeptics watched her with a different kind of attention. Not fear, not awe, but the understanding that mastery often speaks the softest. Carter returned to the training hall the next day with the same quiet steadiness she always carried. No triumph, no pride, just calm purpose. The room reacted differently now. Trainees straightening as she passed, voices lowering, respect settling into the space where doubt used to live. She began the lesson as if nothing had changed. She spoke about breath control, reaction timing, and the discipline of staying centered when someone tries to break you apart. The students listened more carefully than ever. Even the ones who once doubted her leaned in, trying to catch every nuance in her movements. A young Marine raised his hand. "Ma'am, how did you stay that calm last night?" Carter paused. She touched the edge of her cast. "Calm isn't something you feel," she said softly. "It's something you choose." Another trainee whispered, "Briggs never stood a chance." She didn't comment on that. She simply continued the drills, guiding their stances, correcting small errors with gentle taps of her left hand. Her presence no longer needed defense. It carried its own gravity. Meanwhile, Briggs had been removed from training and placed into a behavioral remediation program. Word spread quickly. Some feeling he deserved it, others quietly hoping he'd learn from the lesson he forced upon everyone else. His absence lingered like an echo of the fight none of them could forget. As the class ended, Carter gathered the group. She looked at each face, her voice low but certain. "Real strength isn't in the punch you throw," she said. "It's in the punch you choose not to throw." The room fell into a reflective silence. Even the most stubborn Marines lowered their eyes, absorbing the meaning. Carter stepped back, letting the weight of her words settle. She had never needed to prove anything through force. She simply showed them the truth, that control outlasts rage and technique rises above violence. And for the first time, the entire unit understood that the quiet power she carried was the strongest kind of strength they had ever seen.